between myself and Mr. Warzinski regarding Mr. Goddard. We're determining exactly how we want to do that and when.
All right. Well, until they offer additional exhibits, I mean, before you do that, you'll share it with Mr. Calderon and Mr. Echeveste just to see if there is an objection, and if there is, I'll deal with it, correct?
As well as with Mr. Warzinski, as promised, yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
And Judge, our first witness is going to be Rachel Mitchell, and we've been informed that she's about 4 minutes late.
Okay, that's all right. What do you want to talk about? So I'm assuming your travel plans have been changed.
Your Honor, thank you for asking. We don't know. Well, we were at a meeting this weekend with significant numbers of people from Israel, and these are people of faith, so they believe in miracles, perhaps a little bit more than I do. I would think that probably it's a 20 to 1 chance we're actually going October 30th.
And I heard the news and I thought, I know somebody who's planning to travel to Israel, so.
And if the court pleases, and opposing counsel as well, if at some point, I will know definitely by the end of this week. I would recommend that perhaps on Monday, we might have 5 minutes and we can take a look at a calendar and see if there's any time after October 30th, in case we need a day or two at that point. We'd be happy to. I would be a tabula rasa at that point, so I think we could work on something.
And I thought that maybe next week we'd talk a little bit about scheduling anyway, just to see if we're on track. Any rough idea of when you might conclude your case in chief? I'm not going to hold you to it, but since we've got a few minutes.
Judge, we are diligently trying to make sure that we complete our entire case in chief by the end of Friday, the 20th.
That was sort of my prediction. So yeah, we'll talk next week when we know a little more clearly.
Just for opposing counsel and the court, we've taken the court's admonition to heart to try to streamline.
Good.
So perhaps we'll be able to get it done in those last 4 days.
Well, and to that end, and I'm certainly not holding anyone to anything, but I do know that there have been subpoenas at least issued for certain police officers. We've interviewed them, so we sort of, I believe, know what their testimony is going to be. So to the extent that we may have an objection to the relevance of the testimony, but if it is allowed in, then to the extent that we can tailor maybe a written stipulation to the testimony, because or submission of transcripts of the interview, we're amenable to that as well, if deemed relevant. We still do maintain our relevance objection.
All right, well, we'll deal with those issues as they come up. Who are we anticipating for today after Ms. Mitchell?
That will be Mr. Ayler.
And you think those two will consume the day?
Well, I'll jump in. So we actually have 7 witnesses set for today that we're going to try to get through. That being said, I don't know that we're going to get till 5, but again, we're trying to streamline. So the order will be Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Ayler, Mr. Vick, Katie Gibson McLean, one of the defense attorneys, then Mr. Chris DuPont, another defense attorney, and then we intend to end the day with Amy Caper, one of the protesters who was arrested.
All right, well, that's an ambitious day. We'll do our best to get.
Did I miss somebody?
We're diligently trying, Judge.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do have one other one. Heather Livingston from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office.
And where would she fit in if you?
She would be right before Ms. Caper, so she'll be second to the last. We took your directive to heart. We will get our story out and.
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of background on witnesses is helpful, but just getting right to the point, I think we've got. I have to brag on my hearing panel. They're very diligent. They've been reading exhibits all weekend, and so I think we have a pretty good handle on what's what. But so someone will let us know when Ms. Mitchell's here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
about those Diamondbacks. We can all agree on that, right?
And always talk about the Diamondbacks.
Maybe there are miracles out there, I don't know.
That and the Ravens. We can talk about that anytime anybody wants.
Ravens?
Yes.
Evermore. Kershaw again?
Oof.
If I was a Diamondbacks manager, I'd love to have Kershaw. Postseason comes, and he's cold as ice. Hey, he is cold. They had his number.
Chase Field last night, not for a baseball game, and getting that field ready for tomorrow night will be a challenge.
Oh, that's good to know.
Good morning, ma'am. Before you have a seat, if you would please raise your right hand and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please have a seat. And once you get settled, Ms. Mitchell, if you would please pull the microphone a little close to you because we're amplifying for sound and also recording.
Okay.
There's a fresh bottle of water in front of you, and there's some binders to your right, and the lawyers may at times ask you questions about them, and somebody will try to help you find the correct binder when that time comes.
That would be helpful.
Yes, it would be. I understand. All right, Mr. Henley, you may proceed.
Good morning.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Rachel Mitchell,
Ms. Mitchell, how long have you been the current Maricopa County Attorney?
since April 20th of last year.
Can you give me a list of your prior executive positions with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office? Let's begin with 2019.
In 2019, I was the chief deputy. In 2019, I started off as the division chief over special prosecution, and then I became the chief deputy under Bill Montgomery. When Bill left, I became the acting or interim county attorney. When Miss Adele came, I was chief deputy for a short time, and then I was made deputy chief, which would be like the third in command. And then I was asked in 2021, let me make sure I have my dates right, 2020, to go to start the prosecution integrity unit. 2020.
Did you also function as a division chief of SP1 at any time?
Yes, in 2021, in I believe it was the very first part of June, I was also the SP1 division chief, Special Prosecution 1.
Did Special Prosecution 1 include the First Responders Bureau?
At that time, yes.
Is the First Responders Bureau currently in existence?
No, it is not.
When was it disbanded?
It was disbanded under Miss Adele. I want to say it was sometime in 2021.
During your tenure as, during your tenure doing these various executive positions, what were some of your expectations of the attorneys under you?
Well, as the prosecution integrity unit individual, I had no one under me. I was deliberately removed from the chain of command. That's kind of a standard of those types of efforts. But as a division chief or chief deputy, my expectation would be that they would work hard to do justice. I've always said that we have the best job description in the world, and that's to do justice. With professionalism, with integrity, etc.
Did you expect all of your attorneys to act honestly?
Yes.
Did you expect your attorneys to prepare for their caseload?
Yes.
Act diligently in prosecuting the cases?
Yes.
Would you expect them to accurately assess their cases?
Yes, I mean, some of the younger attorneys, would need to have a little guidance in that, so that they would understand what are true issues and what are issues that are something that can be overcome. But yes, generally speaking.
The assessments that you expected would include not just the strengths of the case, but also some of the weaknesses?
Yes.
How important was it to you that your attorneys complied with the ethical rules governing attorneys?
It's a necessity.
Can a supervising attorney waive an individual attorney's ethical obligations?
No.
Have these expectations remained the same throughout your various roles at the MCAO?
Yes. I mean, there were times I wasn't supervising, but yes.
Do you know Ms. Sponsel?
Yes, I do.
How long have you known Ms. Sponsel?
As long as, I don't know exactly when she started in the office, but, I've been aware of her since then. I don't know when we first spoke.
How would you describe your relationship with Ms. Sponsel?
Cordial. We were never in the same division, so we didn't have that much interaction, but nothing negative.
Did you ever supervise Ms. Sponsel?
For the period of time that I was the deputy chief, I was in the chain of command. I was never a direct supervisor. I would have been removed. There would have been 2 supervisors in between.
When was the last time that you spoke to Ms. Sponsel?
Last time I spoke to her, I think, would have been 2020, the end of 2020.
Did your last conversation with Ms. Sponsel have anything to do with any of the protester cases that were prosecuted by FRB?
No.
Did the MCAO, during your tenure at the MCAO, did the MCAO experience any kind of resourcing issues?
We're government. We always experience resourcing issues.
Can you describe some of the resourcing issues that you've experienced?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is the time that we had budgetary issues and they had to have us take days off without pay. Very, very, very high caseloads in the past. Difficulty hiring people. You name it.
Was there any particular time when these issues really impacted the MCAO significantly?
Yes, there was a period of time when I was the bureau chief over sex crimes, and our caseloads were double what they should have been. That's the thing that stands out the most to me in my career.
What time frame was that?
It would have been the early 10s.
What about more recently? Have there been resourcing issues that stick out in your mind?
When I took over as county attorney, we were down pretty much across the board in all positions, 20%, give or take a percentage. And we were also facing 20% of the people would be eligible for retirement by the end of last year. So that was significant.
During your tenure with the MCAO, have you had to ask for additional attorneys or staff?
Yes.
Is that a frequent occurrence?
I don't know if I would say frequent. I mean, it's common that I would be asking for additional people when the caseloads got too high. For as an example, certainly when I took over last year with the 20% down, I was in charge, so there was nobody to ask, so we had to act, and that was with a recruitment campaign and several other strategies.
Were the staffing and resourcing issues that you've discussed, are they unique to any particular division within the MCAO?
The 20% down was pretty much across the board. I mean, it was in every position, from support staff to investigators to the civil department, to certainly the prosecution.
During your tenure as acting county attorney, did you receive any requests for additional attorneys or staff from division leaders?
Yes.
How do you address those requests?
You know, you have to take a look at the resources that are needed, but you have to look at everybody's caseload. Usually you just try to manage it where everybody is in a similar boat if you have limited resources. You also have to look at, are there certain procedural cuts that we can make where we handle cases differently? In other words, don't file them or hold off on filing them. I mean, you have to look at the whole panoply of things that you can do so that the attorneys are able to handle things effectively.
Did COVID present any particular resourcing issues at the MCAO?
I wouldn't say in particular that during the time of COVID, most of us were working from home most of the time, and there was limited courtroom events. For example, the grand juries were not running, and that created some issues because it backed up, doing preliminary hearings, etc. So there was some shuffling around that had to be done to address that.
Were the number of court appearances, personal court appearances, reduced as well?
Yes.
During COVID, did the MCAO attorneys have access to PBK and evidence.com?
Yes.
Did they have access to body cam footage?
Yes.
How would you communicate with other members of the staff, both attorneys and support staff during COVID?
We had, it wasn't Zoom, I'm trying to remember the program that we used, but it was a Zoom-like program where we could have meetings. We telephonically, email, texting, because all of the attorneys have work phones. So just all of the normal ways except face-to-face.
I want to talk to you about the Prosecution Integrity Unit.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you indicated that it was started sometime in 2020. Do you remember when in 2020?
I believe it was July of 2020.
What is the Prosecution Integrity Unit?
So there's been a trend across the country to have conviction integrity units. And so it's essentially that, but it's a little bit broader, which is why we named it something different. But I had gone back to a training at the University of Pennsylvania on conviction integrity units. I brought the idea back to Alistair Adele. And so essentially what it does is it gives an opportunity for people who, either have new evidence or there's just new information that would draw into question the integrity of a case, to have that case reviewed even post-conviction. It's not a unit, it's not appeals, it's not concerned with you know, did you file something timely? Did you raise this below? Those types of issues. It's really the charge that I have is do the right thing. But we also used it to look at other areas of concern that prosecutors may have. If they, for example, see something on a body cam that concerns them about the conduct of a police officer, then the PIU attorney would review that as well, and in appropriate situations refer that on to the police agency to be looked at.
So do I understand it correctly that the purpose of the PIU is to basically look at the entire case from bottom to top regarding issues of integrity?
Objection, leading.
Well, I can rephrase.
Yeah, I'm not sure we need an answer to that question based on what she's told us, but
Okay.
you can rephrase if you'd like.
Is there a difference between a conviction integrity unit and a prosecution integrity unit?
As we define it, it is broader, the prosecution integrity unit. So conviction integrity units are really focused on cases where there has been a conviction that they're now looking retrospectively at it for whatever reason. We are looking at, as a prosecution integrity unit, we're doing that, but we're also looking at things that pop up during the pendency of the case, such as, like I said, concerning body-worn camera footage would be an example. You know, we're just broader in our scope, so we don't have to wait until there's a conviction before we get involved.
When you are conducting an investigation when you have conducted investigations in the PIU, are you focusing on the attorney or are you focusing on the case?
You're focusing on the case itself, but obviously if any issues would come up regarding the players in the case, and that could be the attorney, that could be a witness, then you're referring that on. So for example, if a police officer we were concerned about some misconduct on the part of the police officer, I could refer that to the police agency. If I was concerned about the conduct of an attorney, then I would report up my chain, but I would also refer it to the ethics committee. So I didn't investigate that part of it. I would just investigate it through the case and say, I have some concerns based on what I'm seeing in the case. So I was more case focused.
How many attorneys were employed with the PIU during 2021? Or I'm sorry, 2020.
Initially, as I was kicking it off, I was the only attorney. I had an investigator assigned to me. If I needed to do follow-up, I had paralegal assistants. I also had an intern assigned to me for a period of time.
But you were the only attorney?
Yes.
How would you receive submittals to the PIU?
If it was concerning a body-worn cam, there was for lack of a better term, form that we developed within our PBK, our case tracking system, that they would fill out and say, you know, here's what I'm concerned about in this case, this body cam. So it would kind of hone me into what I was looking at. I would receive them also from outside. So, for example, it was very common for a parent to write to me, because we had a contact link through our website, saying my son was wrongly convicted. But what we would do is we would then contact the son, the defendant, and say, here's the paperwork we need you to fill out. You know, point us to the parts where you're saying this was wrong, that we should be looking at, and then we would hone in on that. I also worked with the Justice Project over at ASU. They had a grant, for example, to look at all cases from the late 80s and early 90s that had hair analysis involved. And so I worked with them on that. I would have defense attorneys request that we would look at certain cases. Sometimes that would be convictions. Sometimes it would be pending cases where they thought there was an integrity concern or professionalism concern.
What process did you use to conduct your investigation?
It would depend on the nature of the concern.
Would it involve reviewing body cam footage?
It could.
Reviewing the department reports from the police department?